A2Pcast for the week of September 11th, 2013. I am Mike Reckenberry, the editor of Live to Play. With me is Josh Hartman and Mike Shipsky, your standard hosts this week. We are continuing our two-parter, the Future Franchise Edition. This week we'll be talking about the future of Fallout and the future of Halo. Last week we covered the Nintendo 2DS and Mass Effect. Hopefully we'll keep things a little bit more concise this week. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about the transition we've had from Fallout 3, made by Bethesda, to Fallout New Vegas, made by Obsidian, and then to whatever we might expect from a Fallout 4, presumably made by Bethesda. What are we potentially looking forward to? What do we want to keep from the last two games? What do we want to maybe eliminate? So let's just jump right into that. Mike Shipsky, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I'm very excited about the possible setting of Boston. I think that's a really interesting place to explore. I think that's somewhere where we haven't really seen before. But I think See, I am just starting to play New Vegas. I just bought it. I'm playing through it, and I really like the continuation of the combat from 3 to New Vegas. So I hope they go with a very similar type of experience. I think they will probably look to streamline it even more, a la Oblivion to Skyrim. And I would not be against that. Now, what that means for gameplay, I have no idea. I don't know how you can stream. I mean, I think Fallout 3 is fairly streamlined in and of itself.
Well, a lot of the the perk trees and stuff like that in Skyrim are pulled almost directly from Fallout. But I think that's almost been a staple of the Fallout series, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Well, I mean, I couldn't tell you about one or two.
But I'm pretty sure that's continued from the earlier ones.
I think that's true.
Okay.
Good. We're 85% sure that is a correct thing. Is there anything we don't want to see? Is there something that maybe happened in Fallout 3, in Fallout New Vegas? I mean, you have some issues with New Vegas.
Yes.
I do personally. Josh, do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, the problems with New Vegas, they're not as obvious as some of the other problems that Obsidian has done when they take over other people's games.
KOTOR 2.
KOTOR 2, here's looking at you, the game that isn't finished. But in general, the problem with New Vegas is just that it's not as good as 3. There are improvements over things in specific areas, but the game never comes together as a whole as well. It never feels as polished. It feels like it takes the back seat to 3, even though it came out after.
Mm-hmm. And things don't work as well, and they don't look as good.
It's true, 3 looks better than New Vegas, which is
just shocking.
Really strange.
That was one of the first things I noticed when I booted it up and I started playing.
You booted it up on your Xbox?
I booted it up. I gave it the boot. I was like, wow, what was this game made before 3? And they just held on to it, and they didn't. Like, I don't know why this looks worse than 3 in some cases. In some cases, it looks okay. It's on par with 3, but
a lot of the time, it's really underwhelming.
Yeah, it's very underwhelming especially for a game that's released afterwards.
Right, and I think could it be that the lack of cohesion is because some of the assets were pulled directly from Fallout 3, and some of them were created originally by Bethesda or by Obsidian rather.
I would say
the game itself.
That would be tricky to put together.
It does sort of, ripping off is the wrong word because it's, obviously it's all licensed and legal and fine, but is reappropriating a different studio's work and then throwing some of yours on top of it, is that a formula for success? I mean, I think at least in this case, I would say no. That's not to say that New Vegas wasn't a good game, or at least a decent game.
It was an entertaining game.
It was okay.
It's the only problems with, like, when you give a review of New Vegas is just that it's like loss of potential. Like, there's nothing, like I said, it's hard to find what is one thing that was just really awful. There isn't anything awful, it's just that with how great 3 was, New Vegas you wanted it to be so much more. And it
Right.
never really
Well,
went above and beyond for you.
Well, right, but you can't talk about New Vegas without talking about Fallout 3. You can't do it without the sort of
Right.
It's not a standalone.
contrast of Fallout 3.
It can't be a standalone title in a way. Like it can be because like
I mean, the story is independent of
standalone,
Fallout 3.
but it's just so obvious to compare it. Like it's so blatantly obvious to compare it to 3 in like terms of everything. Really. So like, yeah, like building off of the success of 3 and then just kind of repackaging it and redoing some things. Yeah, I don't know. Like I am just starting to play it, so my judgment is as of yet undecided. But I don't know. And I know you said you completed the game.
Yeah, Josh was a total completionist.
For some reason, I'm
on
not
Fallout
normally
New
a
Vegas.
completionist, but I got really into completing as many things as I could because I was having a good time with it. But with Fallout New Vegas, you can really get a lot out of the little things they do well. Like there's a lot of humor that they put into the game that's really good. There's a lot of really funny things. There's a lot of really wonderful moments. For if you're of the mindset of evil, which Fallout tends to be really good at letting you
of
be
course,
evil.
yeah.
If you're interested in doing terrible things to people, New Vegas gives you beautiful possibilities. It gives you really hysterical moments, really fun. An entire gang based on Elvis impersonators. I mean, it's really, it's really good.
It's true. In that sense, it feels a little bit rougher and a little less refined, almost to its benefit.
Yeah, like they have a lot of crazy ideas.
Yeah,
but they just let fly.
Right, and it's they didn't have like the sort of they didn't have the chops that Bethesda does to say like, well, come on, let's rein this in a little bit, give a more cohesive experience. But of course, with a more cohesive experience, you will necessarily have you don't have those exciting little things that happen, like the gang of Elvis impersonators.
Cowboy robots that
Cowboy Sheriff, what is it?
Victor.
Oh, well, there's Victor, and then there's like Deputy Sims, or
yeah, you can get a deputy robot.
The deputy robot, right? Wearing the cowboy hat. It's just fantastic. So you have those things in New Vegas. What do we want to carry to Fallout 4? Do we want that level of insanity, or do we want a refined product, or do we maybe want something in the middle? Do we want like a pure compromise?
Yeah, I think a pure compromise is fine. I think Fallout works really well with that absurd humor. It's
right.
It fits in perfectly.
That's kind of what Fallout is really about. I think so.
So the things that I would want to see to take from New Vegas is feel free to do ridiculous things like Elvis impersonating gangs. But it's the combat, I think, is what most people would say is better. The gunplay in general. It'd be nice if the gunplay was up to par with a first-person shooter. Because Fallout never really feels like a first-person shooter.
No, it really doesn't.
You can't. You can sometimes get away with just shooting the guns, but it never really feels right. I mean, I sometimes fantasize like, what if Fallout felt as good as Battlefield does, shooting guns? Everything else is the same, but the gunplay is as good as Battlefield.
This goes back to
that could be a really exciting game.
This goes back to like the streamlining thing, though.
Right.
To get that experience of a Battlefield, you have to take away a lot of the stuff that makes games like Fallout.
Right.
How can you have a skill governing your aiming if you are in charge of the aiming?
If you're just running and gunning it. But I mean, like you said, that would be really fun, and that would be a really cool idea. Question is, do they keep a balance?
Right. Or are we willing to sacrifice those? Because Fallout, even into New Vegas, is still even more so. In fact, in New Vegas, is very stat heavy in terms of what you see related to weapons, things like that. So you know exactly like what's the base damage of this gun, what's the damage per second when you're shooting someone, like their armor resistance. All of that is information that you're getting.
That is all about compartmentalizing and breaking down the combat and slowing, like pausing the game. Like that's still a big thing in combat.
Right, and so maybe in Fall is So I've kind of always treated the Elder Scrolls and Fallout as the same basic thing with different stories and different settings. Is it perhaps true that the Elder Scrolls is going off in one direction, a sort of streamlined, sexy RPG that everyone can get into, and Fallout is maybe the stat-heavy RPG for RPG fans.
Made for the hardcore.
Right,
gamer.
made for people who like to see, like, what are my armor stats, what are my weapon stats, have to repair these weapons, have to loot, for bottle caps, have to do all of this different stuff.
Creating your own ammunition.
Right, creating ammunition, crafting stuff. And so you have some of that in Skyrim, but it's
the hardcore mode where you have to drink water to stay alive, and you have to have irradiated water all the time.
Or the even more hardcore mode where bottle caps have weight to them, so you can only carry
right,
so
you
much
can only
money
have so much
at a
money on
time.
you, and you have to make a conscious decision. Do I want... And ammunition has weight as well, right?
Mhm.
So you have to make a choice between, like, random items I can have, weapons I can have, ammunition I can carry for those weapons, and also money.
I think they're moving towards being able to have all of that hardcore element to it, but hardcore elements to it rather, but giving you the option to maybe tone down some of that stuff. Because in the beginning of Fallout, when I first played it, they said, "Do you want to play this hardcore mode, where you get a special ending at the end? You get a lot of things that you don't have to worry about so much." We recommend that you don't if you're not a hardcore gamer. I just went with the normal mode because I just kind of want to.
Right, you kind of want to experience it as...
But I think that's going to be the future. In like they're going to give
You think
you.
it'll give you options?
I wouldn't.
I
wouldn't doubt.
Mass Effect is not afraid of giving.
I mean,
options,
Mass Effect 3 was all about like
it has the
you had an option where you didn't even have to dictate the conversation.
That's true.
The dialogue.
That's true. It did it. It played it for you.
Yeah. I mean, and then
that's something I hadn't considered.
going off on a bit of a tangent. BioShock Infinite gave you that 1999 mode.
Right.
It's for hardcore gamers that are super into the stats and like having a specific role and playing it all the way through to the end of the game. But you didn't have to play like that if you didn't want to. So maybe catering to both parties or both markets is a good idea.
That's an interesting idea, but that option is only in New Vegas. We haven't seen that in any of the other Bethesda games, and maybe it's just that the last Bethesda game came out in 2011, and they just haven't had a chance
That's true, right.
to sort of, be up to date with that. Or do we think maybe, is that something we could see them doing, or are they too much about
Designing
one
it-
experience,
designing it for one
like this is the game?
Yeah, I can see them keeping the hardcore mode, keeping it there, and otherwise continuing to streamline the game while always giving you the option to turn it into a really extreme version of it. Although thinking about it again, like I said, it could be hard to control your accuracy, but really I don't think it is. I think you can still improve the gunplay in general, and it's just as they do now. Like your guns become more powerful. Guns across the board become more or less accurate depending on your skill. The world kind of moves around you.
Mm.
And that's still way you can still have fluid gunplay that's fun to do.
Oh,
and
right. I mean,
continue to upgrade to actually make them more
you can
effective.
still have the same statistics and stuff underneath the veneer of battlefield-like animations and making them feel really responsive,
giving them weight and
right.
the enemies. I think the way the enemies respond
to
could use a
being hit.
lot of updating, good physics
Right.
to
Well,
have things be fun to shoot.
I think that's kind of been the case in all of the recent Bethesda titles.
Yeah, it's the trend they're going with.
But I mean, I think they just kind of need improvements in animation all the time. It's even Skyrim. We were really impressed with Skyrim's animations because they looked so much better than Oblivion. But I mean,
But in terms of the general
in terms of
games,
how it actually looks,
it's still
not
up to what other games can
quite
do.
that great. And I think they, that's an area they really need to focus on to accurately sell the gunplay in the Fallout game.
But the big question though is, are they committed to that, or are they still committed to maintaining its aura of this is for people who really like hardcore RPGs? I don't know.
I don't think they will. I think they're going to go with streamlining it and giving an option.
Yeah, I mean, based off of their history and where they've gone since Oblivion and Skyrim, Fallout 3 even.
Especially because
I think it'll be a good indication of where they're going. Streamlining is where they're going. So, I don't know.
What about factions? Keeping factions from Fallout New Vegas.
I liked the factions. That's one of the things I did like the factions. I just thought it was an interesting way to segment off the map, and certain people controlled certain things, and it was a way to. It gives a nice level of replayability. Even I think that certain characters can go in certain places. I mean, there's entire quests that you can't do depending on certain choices you make. It offers you, again, choices to make the choices you make more meaningful and allow you to go back and try it again and do something different. Create a new person, create a new experience. And I always do like dressing up as people, and I think Fallout New Vegas does have that. If you put on someone's outfit, you can pass for them in certain locations, and that's always just exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was an interesting aspect of New Vegas, is that you could kind of dress up and pretend to be in someone's faction, and that would change the dynamic a lot. Or you know, as you said, you couldn't have a certain companion with you because they would alert them. Like if you have Boone with you when you go into the Caesar's Legion camp, you know, he kind of pulls you aside as you're on the boundary of this camp, and he says like, "Hey, look, buddy, if we're going in here, I'm not playing around. I'm going to start killing people. So if we're going to go in, I'm going to start shooting people, and that's that." And so you go, "Okay, Boone, let's go do this. Let's go kill all these people in the Caesar Legion camp." Or you say, "Why don't you just stay here then? And I'm going to go be sneaky." You know, but it gives you that option. It's more interesting than just walking into the camp yourself and having someone go, "Hey, what are you doing here? There's a guy here. He's a stranger. Shoot him." You know, it's a lot more interesting. And it creates a more dynamic experience.
I think a game to compare. This isn't a perfect one-to-one comparison. It's not really an RPG in the traditional sense. But Far Cry 3, the way it has its leveling up system, the way you can customize or upgrade the weapons, the way that you can craft different items, and yet the gameplay still feels really fun, to me anyway. I think that is something that they could kind of not look towards as a template, but like just try to keep the gameplay fun while still maintaining those elements of having choice and having upgrades and having all that stuff.
I like that.
Yeah.
Is there the potential for, and this could even extend into the Elder Scrolls, but we're kind of, let's try to keep it on Fallout here. Is there the potential for Bethesda to do some sort of online integration, some kind of multiplayer element within the next Fallout game, especially given the fact that we have the Elder Scrolls Online, and that the next-gen consoles really seem to be, everything that's in the lineup for these consoles seems to be sort of, persistent worlds, always online, play with your friends kind of thing.
I think it's always been a potential. It could be really nice. I just don't know to what extent would having other people influence your game or enter your game. To what extent would they take it? How much would be good and how much would ruin the experience of what the game is? Because I don't know if there's games that are so singularly based on you. You can have your friends come in and join you and have a good time in your world. Can your world interact with their world? Can they they can bring their character in and have a good time with you, but they can't experience the story along with you. Their story has to go on pause when they come in to do you.
So in a way,
and is there a way to reconcile that? Because I think with Destiny, that's not really... Destiny, as far as I understand, does not have... you're on this single-player track, and then you just have the option to jump into someone else's game, like Borderlands does. Right. If I load up my game of Borderlands, I'm still at the beginning of the game. Right. Because I'm playing through the game with other people.
Us, right.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's the general theme of what they want to happen. So that puts a game like Fallout or Skyrim into murky waters because
This is still your story. This is still
Yeah.
your world.
the point of the single-player RPG is that it's
You
you.
can dictate, you don't want to jump into someone else's world where, like, it's all different. Like, maybe you didn't join with this faction in this.
Yeah,
in
outside
this
of just a really surface level, come on in as their companion, and then when you leave, they just go away with no
I would
consequence.
say I would still like that because I can't.
Yeah,
tell you,
I mean-
I can't tell you how many times I've been playing Skyrim and we've been online and like, man, wouldn't it be great?
It would be nice.
Just
I
like
think
jump in. Just
I would
jump
like
in,
that,
Just
even
hang out.
and just go raid a cave.
just one or two people
Like,
just
that
to
would be fun.
just do fun things, but
Yeah.
to do anything more than that,
But
would
I
take
think
some serious
but,
thinking.
but I think to take it to the level that next games on next gen consoles are looking to do, that'll take some real thinking out and some real like how do we make this work?
Soul searching, even.
Soul searching. So I think we should just plow straight through to the future of Halo, because I think there's a lot to talk about here in terms of where we've seen the Halo franchise come from through all the Bungie years. Now 343 has picked it up, and we've had one title from them, a great title in Halo 4, and Halo Anniversary,
Which is also
which is also a really great game. What do we think is the future of Halo, especially after the E3 announcement we had? It was sort of murky and vague and not quite about Halo 5, but might be, but isn't quite.
Could be about the TV show. Could be about game. Could be
Yeah,
about
I think it's just the E3 announcement being murky. I think it's a general. It was not meant to be. I mean, I think it references Halo 5 with the way we saw what the Chief was doing, where he was, brings emotions forward of what will he be doing next on his story. We saw a thing that looked in the art style of the Prometheans, so it was an introduction to the things I think we can expect to see, but I'm not sure they're ready to let us see anything else yet. And it functions more as an introduction in general. Halo is coming to the Xbox One, for sure. We're not ready to say anything else yet, but it's coming. Yeah, and I think there is a Halo, there's a TV, who is, like, Steven Spielberg is doing something with that? They're doing something, yeah, I think it ties in with that, just like, there is a lot to happen in Halo in the next, few years.
They know who their big moneymaker is. It's Halo. They needed to get the Halo name out into E3, even if they didn't have anything to actually show. Had to have Master Chief come on screen in a robe. I'm still confused by what that means, but
Yeah,
I'm sure. I wouldn't be surprised if that does tie into
Some
story in some way.
yeah.
Something of a storyboard. This is a setting. This is the beginning concept of what they're working with.
Right. I mean, I just feel like it was a mistake not to say Halo 5. I mean, I'm still like I can be on board with sure Halo's on the Xbox. I mean, obviously it's on the Xbox One. We get it. Like, it's Halo. But I mean, just say Halo 5. Just say it. Just
I
put
forgot
the name
about
on
the
it.
TV thing. I think they know they don't want to be. I don't think they want to be exclusive with it because they've got the TV thing coming. Maybe they have more graphic novels planned. They could have any number of things. They're going to keep expanding.
Well, that's okay, but I mean,
Spartan Ops. And, there's a whole little world that they can work with.
well, right, but I mean that's always been the case, and you've always had sort of separate Halo things happening at different times. But it's like if 343 is making this trailer, then it's like 343 is making Halo 5. 343 should just say we're making Halo 5 and not be so strangely hush-hush about it.
It could be a way to artificially enhance the tension for the very question you're asking now. For
What is
when
it?
they know exactly when they're going to announce Halo 5. They know exactly what they're going to do, and they're still working on it. And they didn't want to quite say anything about that just now because then it might soften the blow that they could do later.
And you want to tip their hand too much.
Even though we
But
know
see,
that Halo 5 is coming.
I still don't buy that. They announced a new trilogy. They didn't say Halo 4, we'll see what we'll do in the future. No, they said, we're making 3 new games. It's a brand new trilogy. It's the Reclaimer trilogy. We're going to have Halo 4, 5, 6. Like, they've been announced. They are coming. We know that. It's not like we don't need this other thing, but it's like just a teaser trailer like we got that says Halo 5. That's all I want. And then everything else in the Halo universe can get its own thing. It doesn't need to be an all-encompassing, like, look, we have Halo stuff. We know you have Halo stuff. That's fine. I just think it's strange for them to not come out and say, and not even just in the trailer, but in interviews afterward, when people were asking them, like, why didn't it just say Halo 5? Why didn't we see, like, Halo 5 with the 5 on it? Like, why? What's the purpose? It just doesn't seem to make any sense to me, is what I'm trying to say. To not have a specific thing for that. Even if you're not ready to show any solid game stuff yet.
Yeah, I just don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it's, I think you're implying that there's something insidious, but well, insidious is a big word, but that there's something more to see. I mean, there's always possible, maybe there's some specific crazy reason why, and it'll all make sense as it comes out, but I don't think so. I think it's just so much more easily explained by they just wanted to make it general, or maybe it's something as simple as they're having big fights over how to stylize the 5. I thought it's been really clever so far how they've incorporated the numbers into the title. Maybe they don't know where to put the dot. Are they going to use the O with the 5? Or maybe, what's the font for the 5 going to be? Maybe it's all about that.
They're
fight,
having
what
a big
font to use
fight
for the
about
5?
the font. Right. That's exactly their issue, I'm sure.
Another scoop from the live.
They've decided on Comic Sans.
The original Halo trilogy was stretched over 2 console life cycles. So you had the original Halo on the original Xbox, and Halo 2 on the original Xbox, and then Halo 3 on the 360. And it seems to be the same on the new trilogy. We have Halo 4 on the 360, and 5 and 6 presumably on.
Sort of the inverse. We have
Right.
one on the old console, 1, 2 on the new.
Right. I'm just wondering, does that mean anything? Is there anything to be like gleaned from that, or is just like is it the need to get the game out as not necessarily as soon as possible, but not. So you have like Destiny, comparing it to Destiny here, which is sort of an obvious comparison. Destiny is sort of planned to be the length of the next gen life cycle. It's like a 10-year long franchise. They've planned it out. And that's what it will be. But with Halo, you just kind of like, you get a game when you get a game. And does that, does it sort of break up any of the continuity of how the games look or feel or play with, interact with the different features of the consoles themselves?
Yeah.
I don't know. I know what you mean, I think, there, but I don't know if it, the Halo games, they have so much distance between them when they come out, that I think it's just kind of inevitable that they're gonna fall where they fall, and each one has already been so different from the ones that even Halo 1 to Halo 2, which were on the same console, are really night and day.
Yeah, it's true.
So you have to expect. In fact, Halo 5 is the first time I have expected it to be so similar to the one that came before. I don't anticipate something crazy for Halo 5. Whereas 1 to 2 was a huge leap. I mean, adding Xbox Live Play.
Right.
2 to 3 was on an entirely new console. And then they did, Reach, ODST, which was a nice extension of 3. Like ODST, because it's an expansion, and even Reach, that feels more like, Reach really does feel like an extension of 3. Whereas 4 is completely new. And I expect 5, I don't think I have a good reason to, but I expect 5 to sort of feel like 4.
Yeah, kind of, and look similar as well.
It looks similar and feels similar, but really, even the art style changed over the course of 1, 2, and 3, obviously with 4, because it's a new studio. So that will be interesting to see. I mean, I don't know if the change of console will have as big of a difference on that, depending on when exactly Halo 5 comes out.
I think that gets back to the point of the law of diminishing returns when it comes to graphical capabilities,
right,
and things like that. Is the graphical gap between Halo 1 and Halo 2 and Halo 1 and Halo 3 or Reach is massive. It's so noticeable. But between
I bet you if you had a
between 4 and 5, will it?
comparison from 1 to 2 to 3 to ODST to Reach, what you'd notice like smaller,
Yeah, right.
smaller increments in improvements, incremental improvements in the graphics. So I would imagine 5 looks very similar to 4, and really it's a good time to play it safe with Halo now. I mean, from 4 to 5. I mean, all the changes you noted from 1 to 2. I think they have a winning formula with 4, and especially continuing the story and having the game look roughly the same just because of the limitations of the graphics. Whether that remains to be seen. I mean, since it's not actually a launch title, it could be released. They give any indication?
I think they said 2015.
2015?
15.
I just remembering like way back, I thought they said it was going to be like 2013, 2015, like every 2 years.
That's
okay.
Although it was 2012, so maybe like the very end of 2014.
right. That kind of
That seems
that
about
seems
makes
about
sense.
right.
So we're not talking about it right now. Next year would be surprising. I think it'd be early 2015 would be a nice time for it to come out. Yeah. But yeah, the incremental changes then that just kind of asks: are they going to take advantage of all this trend, the trend of expanding worlds out?
Right.
Is Halo 5 going to be an open world game like everything else is becoming an open world game?
Right. Would that work with Halo? I mean, Halo was kind of like the quintessential first-person shooter.
Yeah.
Well, like console first-person shooter.
Well, because it kind of, it
was.
It
right.
was.
Yeah.
Right. And so
It was the
it's,
trailblazer.
And like you said, you have a winning formula with the Halo franchise, and in particular 4.
I think
Would they take the risk to shape that up? I don't think so.
I don't think so because I think what they have, like, even the major changes from 1 to 2, Halo as a franchise has largely stayed. The mechanics, the controls have always stayed the same because they work so well.
Right.
So I think
You just know them. It's like everyone apes Halo because Halo works so well.
Yeah. So I think to keep it the way that it's been would be the way to go. I think it's one of those few franchises that works so well in what they do that they don't have to follow specific trends. They can follow their own trend. They created a trend in and of itself.
But here we can go back to one of the previous week's podcasts and pull up another thing in Titanfall. Titanfall is going to be, I think, very much a competitor of the next Halo title. They should be,
and they represent a lot of the next gen movements of always
right. In terms of how these things are going to happen. Will the advances in any of that impact Halo? I mean, I know we talked about this before, but maybe doing it in the discussion of Halo could be good too. In terms of, again, so you have the verticality and improving upon the verticality that sort of Halo almost invented, really, in their level design, in their multiplayer stuff. If Titanfall does something better, will Halo follow that trend?
Yeah. I mean, if they deem it to be truly better,
in a word, yes.
If it is a revolutionary, as everyone seems to be making the buzz that it is,
right?
You can't ignore. You don't want to just follow the trend, but it also becomes folly to ignore the trend when the trend is an improvement.
Right. Right. I think that's a good distinction, and I think we should also consider that in Halo 4 in the multiplayer, you now have like the drops and stuff. So you build up enough points, you get to choose one of these 3.
Which I think, I don't know of a game that did that before Call of Duty. I think that's
I'm
right out of
pretty sure that's a Call of Duty invention of some kind.
But I think there's still a lot of. Yeah, I think you're right with the single player that they've set up in 4. They can't. I'd be blown away if they found a way to make that open world. But it seems like the single player is going to go on as a Halo single player.
Yeah,
we understand it to be. But with the Spartan Ops and the multiplayer, I think there's a lot of room to change. Especially Spartan Ops itself is an experiment. It wasn't that successful, mostly because of the story. I think it's a great idea. I just couldn't. I can't get into Spartan Ops mostly because I can't handle dialogue. I could play it on mute, perhaps. but it's totally non-engaging because it's not really that interesting. It's fun to play with your friends, co-op, like Firefight before it was, but
Right.
Yeah,
they wanted to make it a narrative experience, and I commend the effort. I don't commend the results.
It has a lot of potential there, and I think it's, you know...
It's also another thing, does every multiplayer experience now have to work its way into the narrative? I don't think so.
I don't think it has
I
to.
don't think it has to. Like, okay, well, even with the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, it was worked into the story in that, like, it's a squad that's fighting things. But it just was... It worked for me if they just sold it as a multiplayer component. Like, I think if multiplayer is done well, it doesn't necessarily have to work in service of the story.
Well,
So,
I think this is
like the trend of a lot of multiplayer.
well, this is where Grand Theft Auto Online comes in.
Yeah.
Is that it's almost a separate component. It's like it's an entirely separate entity. You know, it isn't even necessarily related to the single player experience in any way.
Yeah,
It's an entirely different game.
It really can be fine. I mean, even if you just take the bar, I just had this idea, maybe not Bungie anymore. Oh God, 343, if you're listening, if you want, Spartan Ops could be exciting if they wanted to make a persistent world that took place within a war. I mean, are the Prometheans going to keep on coming to do things? I mean, they are our enemies now, right? They're not going to invent an enemy just to not have them come back for the next 2 games. Could we take the idea of Spartan Ops and just make it bigger? It's not just a party of your friends. It is a large-scale battle that's taking place at all times, that you can pop into settings and battles and things and kind of move on. It's something that happens concurrently with the story, but doesn't have to tie in with the story. It doesn't need the characters and the dialogue. It's just these things that might be referenced, a war that might be referenced in a story, that you can take part in battles which are always evolving, which would fit into the trends nicely. So 343, if you're listening, you can send me a check for $1 million to, I don't know, Philadelphia, PA, City Hall. I'll stand there for a while and wait.
He's going to buy $1 million worth of chocolate and Halo games.
That's right.
Yes.
I mean, let's talk a bit more about some of the older stuff in Halo games that we really like. So I just think about Halo 2 and how much I love Halo 2. The cinematics in Halo 2.
What is the best Halo game?
Right.
Before the answer was 2.
Yeah.
Is 4 better than 2? I don't know. 2's got this.
2 has something about it that really is.
It's got like a soul.
It really does have a soul. And I mean, you also play as the Arbiter.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of easy to forget that, at least for me. But like a lot of the game takes place as that, and that's such a compelling and interesting thing to do with this enemy that has been set up in at least the first game. It's just like, oh well, it's the Covenant, it's aliens, and they don't like us. Okay.
Halo 2 is really,
Well, good,
have
but
said
Halo
it
2
before, it's a
its
perfect sequel.
It turned it on its head. It made you question
it really goes, it makes you think like, oh wow, there is dissent amongst, the enemy, these scary monsters have a hierarchy. You understand where everyone is and what their jobs are supposed to be. And then you have, the Arbiter sort of bucking the system, messing up, being punished for it, trying to reclaim his honor. And then ends up in league with Master Chief. And it's just, it's such an interesting way to tell the second chapter of a story like that.
Yeah.
I thought it was
I think
so great.
Halo 2 is really, Halo grew up, and Halo was ready to be a real thing. It was ready to be real drama, and I think that's part of the problem with Halo 3, is that Halo 3... If Halo 3 had been Halo 2, it would have been a wonderful game. But Halo 3's main problem is that it followed Halo 2. Because 3 wanted to be as dramatic as 2. It tried to have that art to it. It fell flat on its face. And it just didn't take enough risks? I don't know. What were the faults in 3? Where did 3 go wrong? You can see like the ideas behind it that it made sense. I mean, they had the right idea even with 4. What made 4 successful? They've narrowed it down to it's about the relationship between Chief and Cortana.
Right.
3 is really the same thing, right? I mean, Cortana gets stolen from you by Grapevine. You have to go save her, but it has no emotional impact.
Right. It's not done in a way that makes you care.
Yeah,
It's just a game. It's just a video game. You're just shooting monsters, and that's fine. They do that well, but it's no deeper, and that's a problem.
This is where 4 really shined. Was it made characters?
I mean, I cried twice in Halo 4.
This is a beautiful game.
I didn't think that you could
It's amazing.
care about Master Chief, but you do in 4. I mean,
Right, you really do.
he actually becomes kind of a person. He's not just a nameless guy in a mask anymore. He's actually got feelings and
4
real
is
emotions.
the proper successor to 2. It takes the series in the mature place that it needed to go and needed to grow.
I think, like 5 can. I would love to see 5 continue this pattern of keeping it like a self-contained, like keeping the overarching story big, but at its core, it's about specific relationships.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes down to good storytelling.
Obviously, we can't have that with Cortana dead now.
Well,
potentially.
I mean, I
There's
think
a lot of story possibilities.
I'll just make a prediction. I think 4 was about Chief and Cortana, their relationship, the end of Cortana's life, her going a little insane, losing her mind, being worried about losing her mind, and then, of course, she dies, she sacrifices herself. Though there are allusions to other versions of her or getting her back.
Yes.
5, I think, will be about getting Cortana back. And I think, we sort of saw Cortana losing her mind in 4. I think we'll see some of Chief having that sort of empty space, that void, like...
We'll see a lot more,
we'll have a lot of introspection in some form with Chief.
Or in desperation, in effect, because, he doesn't have his other half.
Right, it's someone who's been sort of like inside his mind, had that ripped away.
Yeah, the danger I think that option number 1 is perfect, and that has to be the central problem facing 5, not facing 5 as a game, as a story, is Chief. How does he deal with having such a facet of him torn away? It's his turn to kind of go through the problems. I don't think it would be a good idea to have him get Cortana back in 5, because if he does that, what happens in 6? And that could run into the problem of creating a trilogy that concludes itself too quickly. Well, then what is 6 about? It brings into questions, if a trilogy is going to be a trilogy, it means it is a story that has to happen in 3 parts. I've seen so many trilogies, they wrap things up too quickly, and then the last thing that happens is so unrelated to everything that happened before it. If the point of the trilogy is an emotional relationship connection, what else is 6 going to be about?
I mean, I still think 6. I don't mean to say that 5 needs to be like first mission, you get Cortana back, and then you're with her. Getting Cortana back is the climax of 5,
right?
And then in 6, you are more or less you have a strengthened relationship there, and that dynamic carries them through to the end of the didact thing, all the Promethean stuff. I think that is where it eventually goes. I think it's about these two, people, individuals, characters, their relationship, and so, their personal struggles, and then their struggles together, and what happens when they're apart, and what happens when they then come back together in 6, and sort of what has then changed. And how is their character dynamic changed?
I can see to your logic. I like that.
Yeah,
and you could boil it down to her problems, his problems, reconciliation.
Right, a reconciling. You come together, and then they have.
And that is, of course, what saves the day.
Right, newly discovered thing that then becomes their boon that they have to carry through to solve the problems.
And they could not have done it without each other. And
right.
That's how stories work.
Right.
That's what makes them feel earned.
Right, and I think that's the perfect way to do the story. I mean, of course, the details are sort of nebulous. They can be whatever, but the arc should be that. And I think 343 is smart enough to realize this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just really hoping they act on that. And so I hope 5 and then eventually 6 reflects those choices. and that they're executed upon well, which is really the biggest part.
Yeah.
They have the gameplay down pat. It's there. The big question is the story and how will it hold up as a trilogy and a story, cohesive story.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps up our second week of future franchises. As always, you can check out our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/alive2play. Our Twitter feed is @alive2play. Comment, tweet at us, tell us what we're doing right, tell us what we're doing wrong. For Mike Shipsky and Josh Hartman, I am Mike Reichenberg, and we'll talk to you next week.